G'day, Krista. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Pretty good, thank you, and thank you for having me here. It took us a while to get the set up to align, but here we are.
Yeah, it has taken a little while, and as I say, I apologise for last week and
Fine.
getting messed up with the time. But that's one of the problems of trying to do this across different time zones around the world. It's always
Yeah,
difficult to coordinate and get your head around. Okay, what time are we getting together? But we're here
exactly.
now, which is the main thing. That's the main thing. I don't want to delve into where you got started with landscape photography and the type of photography that you do, but I do want to delve very much into the why you're doing what you're doing. And I guess I'll start with, what does photography mean to you? What is it in your life?
So photography, if I can go back a few decades, it's changed for me over time. Like in the beginning, it was very much just discovery. It was all about discovery and having a creative outlet. But as time went on, I started, bringing all my life experiences into photography as well. And there was a lot of overlap between what I wanted to say. It always represented something that was going on in my life and how I was interpreting it. So if I couldn't come up with the words for something visually, I work, my mind is very visual. So I'm always thinking about how to bring something I'm thinking about, something I'm feeling, how to express that in images rather than words. It's just easier for me to do that.
Yeah.
So, so if I were to think about it right now, it's definitely still a creative outlet, but I find some of my motivations are shifting over time, like how I approach photography. So the why is, or what it means is just it's a creative outlet and it's how I express myself. That's the best answer I can give, really.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a fantastic answer. I love it.
Yeah.
When what about photography, and in particular the sort of photography you do, which is quite intimate, even macro in certain circumstances, looking at the finer details. Where did that sort of come into your photography? Were you originally sort of documenting grander landscapes and you've narrowed your focus down, or did you start in that, looking at your feet and working around the things that you find right there at the bottom of the forest, for example?
I've never been a grand landscape photographer. I've never been interested in that at all because it's just not something that's appealed to me. And so I think from an early age, I think I was primed to notice detail from a very early age. And I think it's just because I grew up in a chaotic household. So life was a bit unpredictable. So I think that to I had to focus on detail and I had to really anticipate, what I was doing and where I was going. And so I would spend a lot of time in the forest and I just started looking at everything in detail and I just became fascinated by it. So it was anything that was natural history based. So whether it was insects or plants or wildlife, I just spent so much time outside and studying the details that I've carried that with me my whole life. And the interesting thing about noticing details is that you can pick up and anticipate when you're going to find something or when you're going to make a discovery. You automatically put yourself in the situation where you're going to see something interesting, like it, and then the visualization comes in where you're looking at, I found something that really interests me, and I'm really feeling like this is going to be something I need to turn into an image because it strikes me as something that I feel deeply about. So next thing you're visualizing it, but I also know how to turn that into an image, and I know what's going to happen, and it just all comes together. It all falls into place. It's sort of like putting yourself in the path of discovery. Like if you're, yeah. So I think what I wanted to say, my mind was running too fast, but a lot of people when they walk with me and they see and I'll see something, they'll take a few steps back and go, "You just noticed that?" Like they and I don't really know how to respond to that because I just notice things right away. I just automatically notice things that people don't notice. So I don't know what to respond to, how to respond when I get those sort of comments. But
So
I'll just notice things that are often hidden or, you know,
yeah,
just
I'm
yeah,
interested, really fascinated by that thought process as you're sort of wandering around. Is it
yeah.
something that you're deliberately doing and you're deliberately thinking about in terms of seeing those compositions in the small spaces and the patterns and also the chaos that can be, either a forest floor or a piece of tree bark or a rock face or something, what is it that you're actually thinking about when you're actually looking for a composition?
Well, most of the time I'm not looking for a composition, but when I happen to be where it all comes together, then I'm thinking about it. And yeah, and naturally I'm drawn to patterns and repetition and making order out of chaos, which is a very common thing when we're thinking about composition. And
Oh, oh,
so for me, it isn't all aesthetics. It can be it can be something that's very dark and maybe not, or I could look at something and go, that's gonna be black and white later,
yeah,
or that's gonna be a warm brown tone like in a sepia, or I want to make it blue. I've
yeah,
taken sand patterns and made them blue, and I've had other photographers that tell me ice is not blue, and I'm like, well, it is to me. So
yeah.
it can be whatever I want it to be. I don't really,
I'm totally with you on that. I did a
yeah,
series recently of waves, aerial drone shots of waves, and I noticed with one particular one, I'm not sure exactly what it was that I did, but I basically inverted the colors. And
yeah,
so the greens were now browns and the whites were sort of yellowish. And I then started playing around with hue and saturation sliders and whatever, and just coming up with something that, is completely different. It's not, when you look at it, it's not an
yeah.
ocean scene, it's not a sea scene at all. But,
But
it
what you're talking about, which I find really fascinating, is that sometimes we can be a little bit random and unpredictable with where we
yeah,
want to take an image. Like I don't necessarily think, okay, I'm on the beach, I found this fascinating pattern, I want to make an image of it, it's going to be blue. But somewhere along that process, I might completely change my mind. And I
yeah.
might start to feel differently about the image, and it might mean something entirely different than what I started with.
Mm.
But and then there might be cases too where I think, oh, the day is just perfect. I'm feeling great and I found something interesting. And then of course it might just go bust for whatever reason.
Sure, sure.
It might fall apart later and it wasn't as amazing as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
But the experience was still there, right? I still
yeah,
had an
absolutely.
amazing day, but I don't care. So an image didn't happen. Well, whatever. That
Mm.
doesn't, I don't care about that so much. I mean, you might have noticed from my Instagram feed, like I'm not a prolific content creator.
Sure.
And I also have a lot of images buried on my hard drive, and maybe some of them are too personal to share. And so I don't share those.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not someone who feels the need to share every day, and I
Mm.
don't need that anymore. I mean, I think I might have wanted to gauge myself at some point. Where do I fit into this big crowd
Yeah,
of
I think we
photographers?
all do at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I did. And but I've gotten past that now. Like
Sure.
I just don't really care about that anymore. So I'm just I like to say I'm just doing my thing. So whatever happens, happens. So
I think it's a wonderful thing that you do. You mentioned meaning there in what you were talking about around a particular image. When you're saying that, I'm thinking something, but I want to hear what you've got to say about it. What does that mean to you when you're talking about the meaning of an image?
which part which part are
Well,
you referring to? Like
yeah,
you mean like do I care what the other people
no, the
the mean
meaning to you, it's the meaning to you and the feeling that you're getting from an image, because
yeah,
I mean the whole point of visual imagery is to evoke some kind of emotion, whether it's
yes,
a dark
absolutely.
emotion or a happy or a sad emotion, doesn't matter. but it is
Yeah.
to try and evoke an emotion. And
And
I'm
I feel that I do that with my work.
yeah,
Like for me, like I can come up, when I've made some dark images, I know that that would have been at a time when I was going through a lot of loss in my life. And then, there are times where I can make more joyful images, or there are times where I just need calm, because life is chaotic and
yep, yep,
I need to bring an element of calm into my work. And I think that's when I reach for the calming blues. Right. So, it kind of correlates. And I
yeah,
think that's another example of how I make meaning. It's very much mood driven and life experiences and whatever happens to be going on in my life at that particular time.
yeah, okay,
So, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And of course, yeah, and we talk about the sharing aspect, and I still struggle with that a little bit. How much to share, how much just to keep to myself. And, I sort of struggle with that, especially with the political climate going on right now. I find myself wanting to just not be online at all. I'll just, there's an element of me. I just want to crawl back into a cave and just come
yeah.
out 4 years later, or maybe in a
I've
decade's time.
I've got to say, I'm thinking of. I've got a little bit of a germ of a business idea for consulting on people's social media feeds and how to actually cultivate them so they're more positive. I know
Yeah.
personally, I've actually gone through my Twitter account and a few other social media accounts and actually just
Mhm.
done the weeding. It's tedious and it takes
Yeah.
a bit of time, but actually go and unfollow or block the people that are
Yeah.
putting out stuff that you don't want to see in your feed. And
Yeah.
99% of my feeds in social media now are other photographers or people that I find
Mhm.
interesting doing different art, whether it's painting or, you know, other visual arts, even, physical arts, sculpture and all those sorts of things. And so I'm seeing more art and less politics simply
Yeah,
because
and
I want,
I'm starting to see less photographers and more art on my feed for whatever reason. And I think it's
yeah,
because, if I happen to search something on Google and I'm searching an idea for something, and up comes, a certain painting technique or a certain sculpture or drawing, and that happens to show up in my social media feeds, which is kind of interesting. And then as a result of that, I start following artists, and they may not be photographers at all.
yeah,
So, because I have a really strong interest in watercolor and acrylic painting right now.
yeah.
So, which I'm trying to develop on the side too, which is a lot when you're starting from scratch and you're teaching yourself. So, but
Well,
yeah.
talk to me about that process. I'm interested in hearing a bit more about that because for me, visual arts in particular, regardless of what form they take, can help inform a photographer in creating their own work. The use
Mm.
of light and shade in painting has long been known to be about drawing the viewer's eye to what the painter wants you to see and take out of the image. And I guess I'm just interested in how that's working for you and how that process is going.
I'm always carrying a sketchbook, so I'm always drawing. And one of the challenges, I mean, it's something you have to practice constantly to improve, and just like anything else. So again, it's like, I focus on tonality and bringing out and the shading and trying to, so you're getting something lifting off the page, and that's magical when you see yourself starting to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not at the point where I would share any of this, but down the road I might, as
Oh,
I develop some skill in it, perhaps. But I would call that for photography. I think it all relates, but I call it cross training. It can
yeah,
be like a
absolutely.
form of cross training, right? I'm also interested in printmaking.
Okay.
So you might have noticed from my website and my Instagram is that I work a lot with botanicals. So
Yep.
I have a fascination with botanicals, which may bring me to your part of the world too, because the
Awesome.
botanicals in your part of the world are fascinating as well. So
Yeah, we've got some
I know
very
I'll
good
get there
species over here.
definitely, and it's on my bucket list. So yeah, and if I come to your part of the world, I'll probably come for a month. So just so I can see Tasmania as well, Australia, New
Uh,
Zealand. See,
Believe me,
yeah.
a month is you could spend a month just in Tasmania.
Exactly. I know. So, well, maybe I'll have to make it two
Yeah.
months
I
then.
mean, I'm very much. I spend a lot of time traveling around Australia myself, and I never have
Yeah.
enough time. You know, I spent a few weeks over in the far west of New South Wales, the state that I live in now,
Yeah.
and you know, it's basically I think it's a 12 and a half hour drive to get to the other side of the state. And so, you know, split that up into a couple of days and spend a few weeks over there, but it's just not enough. There's just so much there that I can
That
see the
makes
potential of and want to get into, but you just don't have the time.
It's true. Like, I mean, if someone were to say, okay, we're going to come to Canada and we're going to stay for a month, and
Oh,
I would kind of chuckle and go, okay, so are you going to do the East Coast or the West Coast?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so or are you just going to go to the major cities? So, but yeah. So getting back to the cross training, yeah, I started getting very interested in printmaking, but just sort of like just very easy processes at home, like using like a jelly plate and
Yeah,
I ordered some special printing inks. And if I take that a step further, I will end up buying an etching press, like just something like simple, like not a big, huge etching press, but something where I can, increase the pressure and do more
yeah, sure.
consistent sort of prints. But so that interests me a lot too. And, using a flower press and pressing botanicals. So
Mm.
anything botanical related, like, you know, I'm all in. So,
Do you see yourself ever doing full crossover where you might start with a photo, for example, and then get into overprints or even watercolor hand painting? I've spoken to a couple of artists who do exactly those sorts of techniques, and I'm just interested in how
yeah.
people
And
blend.
I have done a little bit of that. I've taken charcoal, I've made charcoal backgrounds, and then I've
Yeah,
used botanicals to create a winter scene. What else have I done? I've created backgrounds so far. Like that's as far as I've gotten so
good.
far in terms of sharing. But if you saw the piles and piles of experiments that I'm just, it's very common for me to before I ever share an image, I might go through 12 to 15 renditions of it.
Yeah, wow.
And starting from scratch. And so I joked with a friend of mine that, oh, I might post a photo this month, but I'm on my 15th rendition. I'm not sure if, you know, I might.
I think that's awesome though, the perfectionism around making sure that it's absolutely right before you put it out into the world, you know.
Well,
I'm actually very guilty of not doing that. It's just
it's
okay,
more a it's more a
that'll do. Get
feeling.
it out.
It's more a feeling. It's not necessarily wanting it to be perfect. It's just
Okay.
it has it just you just know when it feels right somehow.
Yeah.
And that you're done. Like, okay, you're done. Like this is what I'm happy with this. This is
Yeah.
what I want it to be. So
I
yeah.
want to talk a little bit about that experimentation side of things. Do you find dealing with experiments, as you said, you know, you go through multiple iterations before it feels right.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those iterations? Are they just scrapped? Do you keep them as potential ideas for other things later, or what do you do with the I don't want to call them failed experiments, but the steps on the way to actually, you know, culminating in an image that you're happy with?
They tend not to throw very much out. And that's because I can see the progress. And sometimes I go back and I can
Yeah.
see the little, gems of idea. I can see that when I go back and I look at my work. So
Yeah.
I keep a lot of sketchbooks. Like some of them are just photography, some of them are just drawing, some of them are experimenting with pastels, ink, all kinds of different, like I have many different kinds of pastels. I work those sometimes over watercolor backgrounds and then I'll photograph those digitally and then I'll use those with my photography. So I do that too. So yeah, I mean, strictly that's when I'm mostly working with botanicals, like, I'll create, because for whatever reason, I love texture. So if I
Mm.
can create in layers, I'm building up texture and a depth to the work somehow. And I'm creating something that, evokes a response from me anyway. So
Well, I get it evokes a response from you. What are you hoping that other people take away when they look at your images?
I'm always a little bit, I don't know if flattered is the right word, but I mean, it feels good when someone says to me, like you've made me see something in a different way, in an entirely different way, or somehow, you've brightened someone's day for whatever reason. I've had that too, where, someone has said, I saw your image. It was the first one I saw on my feed this morning or whatever. And that's kind of that's a nice feeling when you've lifted someone else's day in whatever way.
Yeah,
But yet I still struggle with social media, so I don't know. So when I do post, it's a nice feeling if you've lifted someone's day somehow.
yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't mind if someone looks at an image and it's not what I intended. Like I don't mind that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean take it as you
Oh,
want to take it.
yeah,
Yeah.
the you can't control how someone is going to interpret what you've put out there. So
No, not at
it
all.
it is all about, okay, just saying, okay, you liked it or didn't, you know.
Oh, and there's always going to be people that don't like it, something, right? So, I'm not someone who has, a faithful loyalty to realism. So,
Yeah,
people that, I have no problem arranging things and making an image, but some people, believe everything has to be exactly as you found it. And,
yeah, yeah.
I don't have any loyalty to realism. So, yeah.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
How much of your success do you attribute to your ability to communicate those feelings that you're having in your images?
Oh, success.
Or what?
Just success.
Let's start off. What is success in your photography?
Well, I think I think this has definitely changed for me over time. I think I used to measure success by, am I, where we measure or we compare ourselves to others somehow, like where do we fit into this big pool of people that are doing work, where do I fit in? And I know that I went through that phase. But I think now I'm defining success as, am I doing what I really like to be doing? And is it something that feels meaningful to me? Like
Sure.
I'm putting my sensibilities and all of my experiences and what I'm interested in into my work. So that to me is how I'm measuring success now. And then, yeah, and if I share it and it's people respond well, that's kind of an added bonus if
Yeah.
but it's not necessary.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you connect with a place before you photograph it? Do you rely more on instinct, research, or experience?
Yeah, I don't tend to research anything. Most of my research is probably after the fact.
Okay.
So if I go to a new place, the first thing I'm going to do is just I wander. I
Yeah.
wander and I get a feel for it, and I'll often go back in different weather, different seasons. Sure, I might have my camera with me. Sometimes I might just carry my iPhone. I mean, I use my iPhone like continuously.
Yeah.
I've commented in the past that, my iPhone is like a visual diary and it's a catalog of ideas that I can use for something later on. So sometimes I won't bring my camera, the big camera. I'll just bring my iPhone and, get a feel for the landscape, what's in the landscape. And again, it's putting yourself in the path of, things like wildlife or what
Sure.
happens to be blooming in that season. And the textures are different in every season. So yeah, I rarely go to just one place, and I'm rarely just content with going once to an area and go, oh, been there, done that, and carry on. I always go back to this similar places, always.
I almost always ask my guests, is there a specific place that you've had a deep emotional or spiritual connection to while shooting? And if so, why does it hold so much meaning for you?
Oh, yeah, there'd be many places. I can think I'm kind of drawing a blank, but I think now there are like three or four places that I go to frequently, and whenever I wander to these places, like I'm always thinking in my mind of the other days I was there and what I might have, who I was with, what the conditions were like, what it felt like. Like I carry all that in my head. And I think every time I go, I'm just building on that.
Yeah.
So, and that's another way of making meaning, I think. And I generally, most of the places I go to are, I mean, there are very few people. People that detracts from my experience if I have too many people around.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Do you
but
prefer shooting alone?
yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm with, say, I'm wandering with my sister, I will most likely not make very many images, you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, if I'm wandering with her or a friend, like, and I take an interest in something, they'll probably just wander away and leave me to do what I need
It's
to do.
just Krista doing her thing.
Yeah, just come back in a couple hours and you know. So, but most of the time, yeah, I go on my own.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and I'm not, I think when you're comfortable in the landscape like that, just yeah, I don't even think twice about going on my own, like early in the morning or staying out all day. Like I don't think anything of it. Yeah.
Have you ever collaborated with other artists, such as painters or musicians, or
I
to
have
create?
collaborated. I have collaborated with a painter, and we ended up putting our images together for a small exhibition.
Okay.
And that was, gee, I think that was about 6 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
So we had a painting on one side and then we had my photography and image on the other. And we did a whole exhibition like that. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed that because, we both approached subjects differently and what we're trying to say with our work too. But this allowed us to sort of collaborate and think about where the commonality was
Yeah.
between
Trying to find
our,
the pieces that fit together, but also the differences and the contrasts, I guess. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Would have loved to have seen that exhibition. Yeah.
I think we called it synchronicity. So I mean, it
No,
wasn't, a super original title, but yeah, it was fun.
I,
It was fun. It was good.
I was talking to somebody the other day. There's nothing original in photography or art anymore. It's all, can you find something that's a little bit unique and different? But in terms of
Yeah.
originality, it's very, very difficult to find
And
in the.
that's something I talk about with a lot of people and a lot of other photographers. And I think it's important to at least try to strive for
Oh, absolutely.
originality. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, and I think yes, we all are unique in our own ways and we see things a little bit differently. And
Yeah.
so, and I think, when you limit yourself to just going to the same parks as everyone, like I think I mean, it comes back to motivations. I mean,
Mm.
yes, you want to visit places that you have a connection to and all that, but and photograph them because, you haven't photographed them before. But I mean, I
Absolutely.
tend to not do that, but I mean, I understand why people do.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, so,
yeah,
so do I. But
yeah.
yes, get the obvious shot. But I'm also when I talk to clients that are on my workshops and that sort of thing, it's always about, okay, we've got the obvious shot. Now let's look for the less obvious shot, something that somebody else hasn't, you know, step back a few meters and frame it with that tree because that particular view, if you're outside, you know, of that view, you're not going to have that framing, and that framing is something a little bit different because most people go and step outside, so finding
Yeah.
those things which are different, put your camera down low, bring it up high.
And I would be the person asking about the tree. What kind of tree is that? Why is it
Exactly.
growing where it's growing? What is it shading? What plants are around the tree? Oh, do mushrooms grow under there? I'd be crawling around there, and
Yeah,
looking at the
looking for the
undergrowth.
root structures and whatever that are poking up above the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I would need to know about it in detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'd want to go back and visit it in another season. So, you know, yeah.
How do you think landscape photography or photography in general has helped you grow or change as a person?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I know that I've certainly evolved in photography, like how I started in photography, obviously way back as a teenager, but in terms of how I photographed, what I photographed, and then I would have big lulls in where I didn't do any photography at all because, I was working all over the world or whatever and just having a very busy schedule and just different things. So I would say that I'm always evolving, like I'm always expanding my ideas and thinking what else photography can be. Like I don't view myself necessarily anymore as a straight photographer. I want to push the envelope of what photography can be. And so I'm moving more into combining and cross-training and combining mixed media with photography. I know that I'm going in that direction. It's happening very slowly, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know that I'm moving into that direction.
Like
Yeah.
anything, the skill build up for each of those disciplines has got to be there
Yeah.
for you to, I think,
Yeah.
successfully create something. It's
And well, I think also because I sort of feel like nowadays, I mean, everyone's a photographer. Like it's just we're so inundated with images, right? I don't know if you've heard of the book Stolen Focus by Johann
I
Hari.
have, yeah.
Have you heard of that? Well,
I haven't read it yet, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
he has a line in there, and he says, it's like we're drinking from a fire hose, and that's exactly what it feels like to me. Like
Sure.
I'm almost overwhelmed by it, like. And I think that's another reason why I tend to limit social media a lot because I just feel so overwhelmed by it. And it starts to look very homogeneous, like it just starts to all look the same to me. There
Yeah.
was a time when it used to be all grand landscapes, and now it seems to be all intimate landscape,
Yeah, there's a
you
hell
know?
of a lot of people that have
Mm,
shifted or
yeah.
made that shift or
I mean, I
doing
think that's yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, I'm more interested in that anyway,
both.
but even that is starting to look very homogeneous to me. It's starting to look very similar. And I can even notice that in my work, sometimes I'll start, oh, well, I've done that a gazillion times before. Like, what if I did this instead? Like, what if I looked at that in a different way?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of I'm trying to push myself out of repeating myself. Like I try not to repeat myself too much. And that's mostly because I mean I do get bored quickly with approaching things in the same way. Like I need to do it differently. So
We talked a little bit about what photography is in your life. How do you balance the rest of life and photography?
there was a time
Or in your
when
case, art.
there was a time when photography I used to like it used to be something I would make time for because I had to, and I think it was an escape. It was an escape for me, my creative outlet. That was something that I needed, and it was how I distilled life experiences, perhaps. But now I have my children are older now. They're on the cusp of young adulthood.
Mhm.
So I have a lot more time now to spend blocks of time being creative. And I mean, that involves a lot of wandering. And if I make an image, great. But it's become more about experimentation and play
Yeah.
now, like even more so because I have more time for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
And are you still working full time or part time
No,
aside from photography, or is it
I'm sort of I'm sort of in between. Like I'm doing photography conferences.
right?
I do some collaborations. I do some guided hikes and nature interpretation with women's retreats. So, but it's not like something that I've made consistent. So I do have chunks of time where I can experiment and play. So,
I'm interested. You live in Nova Scotia, so how do you think that has shaped the way that you shoot as opposed to what you shoot? Obviously, you talked about coming to Australia, for example, to get some interesting, but I'm interested in how where you live has influenced how you shoot.
well, Nova Scotia is almost an island, so it's almost completely surrounded by water. So
Mm.
there's never a shortage of coastline to explore. And we still have a lot of wilderness areas. And, I can go to many places that I like to visit, and I sometimes don't see anyone, or I might see one or two people. So I would say that influences me because I know that when I leave my own area, like I leave Nova Scotia and I go somewhere else, if I go to a densely populated area, like I'm not inclined to take out my camera at all. I might just, you know, if something grabs my attention, I might use my iPhone. But So living here and the climate too is, I've adjusted to the climate. So we get cold snaps, we get areas and at times where it's like in our cold snaps we can have -20. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
last for a long time, but I love those times because I love extreme weather as well.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think I'm drawn to remote and isolated sort of landscapes where I'm not overrun by people
Yeah.
and I can have the place to myself to just think and wander and discover neat things.
What's the furthest you've wandered to try and get a shot, just specifically on a photo shoot?
You mean like here where like on a day-to-day
Oh,
basis or
anywhere. It could be anywhere, and it could be across the globe.
oh, I don't know. I could have hiked for like 12 hours or so and then I realized, oh, it's getting dark and I'm gonna be hiking back in the complete darkness. So, so yeah. I mean I've camped on beaches too and just
Yeah,
decided to stay, right, for several days. But yeah, I could wander for hours and time just goes by and I don't notice. So
yeah. What's your most
yeah, I think
memorable? Sorry, go on.
no, I think we're all like that when we get lost in the creative flow,
Oh, absolutely.
or just wandering, you get lost in thought, and before you know it, hours have gone by, but
Definitely.
somehow your day feels better because you've done that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
What's your most memorable time out in nature?
Oh, geez. I'd have to really think about that. I mean, there are too many, there are too many times to count. I mean, it could just be an encounter with wildlife that I didn't expect to see, and instead of taking out a camera and trying to capture it, I just stood mesmerized. And it could be something simple like coming across a snake, swallowing a frog or something, It could be coming across a salamander eggs in a pool somewhere, like all those things are memorable to me because,
Yeah.
you know, just or finding a rare plant. Like I get excited about things like that, like
Yeah.
finding a rare fern, like a rare fern in a bog that I'd never seen before. And it's only found in like two locations in my province. So finding a rare plant is really special and memorable to me. So yeah, I have yet to photograph that yet because it was like only like a centimeter. It's the smallest ferns in our area they're rare. They're very rare.
What
Yeah.
what about horror stories? Have you had any near misses or anything that has been a bit, I guess, less than pleasurable?
I would say yes, and it probably involves stupidity more than anything,
Usually does.
maybe being a little bit unprepared, like for the weather. I know I have. Like I've gotten lost in snowstorms, but not for very long. I've also fallen through ice, and I've been on my own. So
Okay.
those are things that, it's it's taking risk, really. Falling. I've fallen before and I've hurt myself and I've been alone and I've had to, scramble back a long ways back to my car. So yeah, I mean, there's probably many horror stories. So yeah. So yeah,
You mentioned printing or doing prints. Do you print your own photos?
I do. I do. I just recently bought a new printer and I have yet to set it up. I've been too busy, but once I get that going again and I'll calibrate it, then I will be printing again. And mostly it's for myself and family and friends. Like
Oh,
I don't have like a shopping cart on my website. Like it's
okay.
not something that I wanted to make a business out of. Like it's not something that interested me as a moneymaker aspect.
Uh,
Mm.
that,
So
you
I
got
print,
no
I,
worries
I
about
print.
that. People aren't buying prints anyway.
Exactly, right. So I mean, I'm just printing for my own because I think it is a good exercise in the process, right?
Yeah.
It's an exercise in, from conception to, developing it and then seeing it printed out. And that's when my attention to detail is really,
Mm,
highlighted a lot too, because I can figure out what I'm doing wrong and how I can improve, the tonality of something and the
yeah.
light and dark and all of that. Definitely.
Do you enjoy I guess the arcane art of printing?
I've gotten away from I used to love doing it and I've gotten away from that a little bit. I find myself reaching more towards thinking about PDFs.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going more digitally, and I'm also thinking about, I want to even try scanning, doing some playing with a scanner
Yeah. Okay.
and making some images that way. And I know, what could be done with that? Like what kind of images can be done with that? Like,
Mm,
and combining that with mixed media, like there are so
sure.
many different things that I want to try.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Have you ever struggled to find inspiration with your photography? And if so,
Oh
how did you
yeah,
handle that?
definitely. I think I think that's universal with photographers. We all fall into creative ruts. For me personally, I think it happens when I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes if I have too much going on in my life and I'm overwhelmed, then I'm less likely to be thinking creatively, you know? But I mean, that's not an absolute thing. Sometimes I can. Sometimes I can just shut off the chaos of life and focus on something.
Sure.
And then other times it's just like, it's just too overwhelming. And sometimes I think it also happens when I notice I start repeating myself. And I
Yeah.
know that I need to evolve my ideas a bit further. I need to go off in a different direction and try something different, think of something differently, and explore it in a completely different way.
Okay.
So that happens too.
And what sort of things are you doing to try and get yourself out of that?
I open up my sketchbook and I'll
No.
start drawing and I'll start planning out something that I want to do or ideas. I'll start making a list of ideas or another thing that I do is I do keep a running list of photographers that I follow and other artists. Like I do keep a list and because it's so hard on social media to sort of customize your feed so that you see the people you want to see, it's really hard to do that because
Yeah.
now there's all this garbage on the feeds all the time now, which I find very frustrating. So I keep like a little running list and and people suggest other photographers and I know I'll look up their work and I'll go to their websites and always with an artist that I find interests me or I discover I hadn't seen before, I'll go right to their website and I'll look. And so I get inspiration from other photographers as well. I could look at an image from another photographer or say a painter, and it'll make me think of something else. It'll make me think about, well, what if I took that particular plant and you know, combined it with different colors or different textures. And, I think that way as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I get ideas. I get inspired by looking at the work of others. I mean, I would never shut that off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and I have a huge art book collection too, and I'm always going in there for inspiration. So, and that can be anything. It can be a sculptor, a photographer, painter, printmaker,
Yeah.
could
Mm,
be anything. Abstract.
awesome.
Yeah.
What do you see as photography's place in society?
Well, I think I think it's important because I mean I think there's a danger to it, but I think there's a negative and a positive. There's disadvantages and advantages. Right now, I mean, it can cause divisions in society globally as well, but on the positive side, it can be used to draw attention to certain issues or even certain landscapes. But of course, that can be not such a good thing as well. Like, I mean, if you look at some of the parks in the US, they've become even more overrun because people have been sharing photographs, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's the same here. It's the same in Canada. I'm sure it's the same in Australia too.
Oh,
Or,
absolutely.
I mean, just look at what happened to Iceland. Once everyone started going to Iceland, that would be one reason for me not to go to those places. I would probably pick a corner of Iceland that is not run by tourists. So, if I were to go, but yeah, so I mean, photography has its place, but again, I think I look at photography as an art form, so I'm always looking to push it into the art side as
Mm,
opposed to this is what I see and photocopying the landscape or just, you know, making an image of something exactly as someone else might see it. Like that's
yeah.
not what I want to do. So
What do you see as the future of photography?
I'm hoping that I'm hoping that people will look at photography and start wanting to push the envelope of photography a little more instead of adhering to a certain way of making images that
Mm,
we don't put limits on it, that we let ourselves just experiment and play and expand and you know, you've probably already talked about AI on other podcasts, but I
Yes,
mean,
several times. Yeah.
I don't use AI in my work, but yet, I don't have a problem trying different things in Photoshop. In
Yeah.
like an example, I've created montages. One example was I spent like 2 hours just photographing snowflakes. Not super macro, like not super,
Yeah.
super macro, but I just photographed a lot of different snowflakes. And then I took each snowflake and I put it on one image. So I created a montage.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, that's something I did in Photoshop. So, but I still think photography should be grounded in our own imagination. It should be grounded in our own work. So I don't consider like an AI image where AI is using a bunch of things from where I don't know where, and then you call that your image. Like to me, that doesn't really,
Yeah,
that's not,
the purely generated stuff
yeah, like that's not,
doesn't interest me.
no, it's not using your own imagination and your own creativity. You're not producing something that's unique to you.
Yeah.
So whereas, you're using Photoshop or you're using even a light pad or a scanner, like you're
Yeah.
still creating something that originated in your own mind. So,
And I think that not necessarily totally manual creation has its own inherent value, but I think, as you say, it's that conceptualization that has to come before you know, manipulate the image, because that manipulation in itself has a level of skill involved.
yeah.
Whereas writing a few words into you know, a prompt, I don't see takes a lot of skill. I mean, yes, some
Yeah.
people claim that there's quite a bit of skill in doing it, but you could write one
Yeah.
word and it'll still spit out an image. It might not be very good depending on the
I
word you
mean,
use.
I have to say that's not something that interests me at this point in time, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's ever evolving, and I think AI is here to stay.
Oh,
So
it's no doubt.
what are we going to do to, and how we embrace it and how we use it is to be determined. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that I've used ChatGPT. I know I've used it for looking up things, but I'm careful to, fact check. you know, like to make sure that, I've looked up, okay, is that correct? And I've caught it making mistakes many times, like especially for authors of books or poetry or
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
taking quotes from things. Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's here to stay. I mean, it does have a place. So it's
Mm.
just a matter of how are we going to incorporate it? I mean, we can't just, you know, say no to AI because it's we are going to use it. So, it's just a matter of time and how we use it in photography. So,
Definitely. Definitely.
yeah.
What's your favorite thing about being a photographer?
Well, I think I've been calling myself more of an artist now. And I think it's more like having an artist mindset because I'm not just limiting myself to one approach. Like I'm trying many different things. So I would say, yeah, being an artist, just being free to experiment and play and to channel whatever I'm thinking and how I make meaning into
Mm.
my work somehow.
What about your least favorite thing?
Right now, it's being inundated by visual imagery. It's just too much for me, so I have to shut it down. I
Sure.
have to control how much I see and how often. And, I would much rather pick up a book and look at the work of people that way or somebody's website than scrolling through a social media feed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
it
Sure.
just seems very fake to me.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you like to do when you're not doing art?
Wandering. I like to wander. I love to read. I love to wander. I have a piano in my living room, so I play piano. That's something that is important in my life as well. Definitely spending time with my children, sure, and
Yep.
watching them grow into just amazing people. So that's a proud mama,
Yep.
experience for sure. And just watching them be successful, whatever they do, and find meaning in their own lives. What else? Travel. Travel is something that I'm going to do more of for sure.
Okay.
I have my bucket list, and it's growing by the day. So
What's top of the bucket list at the moment?
I like to go south in the winter whenever I can.
Okay.
So I like to have a break, and I like to explore caves in the south. I love to snorkel in the south. Definitely, I want to hit Scandinavia.
Yeah, okay.
So Sweden, Norway, Finland, I'd like to go there.
Yeah,
Australia definitely is on the list. That's in the top five, with Tasmania and New Zealand. Like I
absolutely.
said, I might need 2 months for that.
Definitely.
Jeez, yeah. That's all I can think of for now.
That's fair enough. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
To I think people focus too much on technique,
Yeah,
a certain way of doing things. So when someone's tried to tell me things have to be done a certain way, like when someone tells me that, right away I'm thinking, how can I do
that's
that
bad
differently?
advice.
You know, like I'm just going to do the opposite because,
Yeah,
if something is, I don't know, the moment a photographer said to me, well, ice is not blue, or, you know, did you put that there? Did you put that feather on that pattern of sand?
yeah.
You know,
So what if
like,
you did? No.
yeah, like I don't know why that's important. Like I don't know
Well, the
why.
wind could have blown it there, or the sea might have dropped it there, but I did. So what?
Oh, what if I was carrying it and then I just decided to yeah, there, I like that.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
it
It
depends
does
what
amaze me how many people, have particular ideas about what, photography should be. And
yeah.
I get photojournalism, you want truth in your image there, and
Yeah.
you
I
don't want
I'll
that stuff to be faked. But when it comes to art, I think basically anything goes.
I'll never be a photojournalist because I have no interest in realism. So I have no interest in adhering to realism. So
Fair enough. Fair
yeah.
enough. Are there any photographers out there that you think I need to be talking to on the podcast?
Yes, there are a few that I think, yeah. So Chris Murray, he works out of New York State, and he
Yep.
does predominantly black and white.
Okay.
Anna Morgan, she's on Vancouver Island. She does beautiful, quiet, thoughtful work.
Nice.
Yeah, let's see. Who else? There's another fellow photographer from Nova Scotia. Her name is Kaz Stone.
Okay. Yep.
She does some interesting work. I mean, we both have some commonalities, but we're both very different too. So
Yeah.
she does produce great work as well. Do you want 50 more photographers?
I know we could sit here and list a whole bunch.
You must be reaching the end if you're asking me about photographers now. I'm
No,
kidding.
well, no, to be honest, I don't think I'll ever run out of people to talk to. It's just how long I can keep going. And I, I'm not bored yet, and I've been doing it for a bit over 3 years, so I'm still enjoying it.
Do you find that I mean you've interviewed quite a few photographers at this point. So do you find that after talking with someone that it might change how you approach your own photography and then you might try something different that you hadn't done
Oh,
before?
absolutely. I said this a couple of times in other episodes that it's been like a university education in photography without paying for one, which has been nice.
Yeah, like I would
I,
think that would be, yeah, I would think it would be really inspirational
Yeah,
at
it has
times.
been, and that's one of the reasons why I still love doing it 3 years in. It's something that I don't see myself stopping anytime soon, simply because I'm fascinated by how other people see the world, and I'm
Mhm.
not very strict on what landscape photography means. I've had filmmakers, I've had digital artists, I've had people that, very much may not fit the mold of strictly being a landscape photographer,
Yeah.
but landscape forms at least a reasonable body of their work, and therefore I can attach that to the name of the podcast. But that aside, I'm actually willing to chat to just about anybody.
Have you have you interviewed anyone that's done still life photography? I didn't
I
look through your
haven't
all
yet.
of
No,
your
I haven't
yeah,
spoken to a still lifer yet.
yeah.
Though
It's-
I've I've spoken to somebody that incorporates. It was actually a digital artist Sandra D is her handle on Instagram. I can't think of her actual surname right now because it was quite a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
episodes ago. But she does digital art and she uses her own photography along with pieces of art and whatever that she collects from all over the shop. And
yeah,
sometimes it's a still life, sometimes it's a landscape, sometimes it's something that's just complete and utter fantasy. And
yeah,
it was fascinating talking to her about that process because the photography link, even though, some people might say it was tenuous, it was interesting to me how she's utilized the photographic elements in her digital art. And,
yeah.
to me, that was really what I was fascinated by, not so much the fact that it was strictly landscape or not.
Yeah, and that's something that I've expanded into that area as well. Like I have a strong interest in still life photography too. So we'll see. We'll see how much more I do.
I've
But
never really, never
it's
really,
very it's
yeah.
yeah, it's meditative is what I was going to
I
say.
can
But
I, I can imagine that, yeah, and getting the lighting just right and everything. The thing that I guess I'm more of a freestyler than a controller, and I know that might
yeah,
sound weird for a photographer, but I prefer to react to the way light interacts in nature as opposed to structuring things so that light is, I'll move myself and the tripod or my camera
yeah,
around to get the angles that I want. But, actually, it's never really been something that I've thought about in terms of actually structuring an image, on a table or a bench or whatever, and then lighting it in a particular way to set up
yeah.
exactly what I want. And
And I
I
used to
guess to
think,
me, that level of control is kind of anathema to the rest of my work. So,
I know, and that what you're saying makes total sense to me, and I was really surprised how much I started enjoying it.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I thought like that too. And then once I got started, there was someone else. There was a well-known photographer, Joel Meyerowitz. I don't know how you say his. Yeah, he's somebody that took up still life photography, and I remember reading that he was surprised at how much he liked it,
yeah.
because he found it the same. Like it was just very,
I'll have
he
to give it
could.
a go someday. I've done you probably know this from your gel printing. I've done marbling and
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
not
that's fun.
not put that onto paper, but
Mhm.
actually worked with the interaction of the inks on the sides
Surface.
by and then photographing that as it changes and again not being in total control of what's happening but having some control over what it looks like at the end result is
And
uh,
that's buying, and there's specialty inks for that too, isn't there?
yeah,
Like they
yeah.
have to have
I've
it,
actually
they
got
have to,
a marbling kit that has the size and the special inks and everything that you use. But you can use things like milk and there's a
yeah.
few, vinegar and a few other elements which do different things to the inks. And yeah, it is a fascinating and very meditative experience to sit down and play with those things and
Yeah.
again, it's completely different to what I normally do, but it's just something
Well, this might make you
very
laugh. This might make you laugh, but there was one time where, after turkey dinner and a Thanksgiving here, and there was like, turkey fat left in the roasting pan,
yep,
and
yep.
it was like one of those blue roasting pans, and I
Uh,
started swirling it around with a spoon, and then everybody started to laugh because I grabbed it and I took it into the studio and I started photographing swirling fat in the pan, and it actually looked
Fantastic.
really amazing.
I can
So
imagine. Yeah,
yeah, so you never know what's going
I
to
might do that the next time I do a roast.
just something different to do,
Yeah,
you know.
brilliant. Well,
Yeah,
I've got one more question for you, and it's a
sure.
question that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since the beginning of the podcast. Do you like
Uh-oh, is this
pineapple on
the
pizza?
meaning? Sorry, say it again.
Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yeah, I do. I do.
You in the yes camp then. Very good.
Yeah, I will take anything on a pizza except for olives, believe it or not.
No,
So
I don't mind an olive.
I'll eat anything on a pizza. So even anchovies.
Some pizzas, if the anchovies aren't there, it's not right.
Exactly.
Well, it has been absolutely wonderful spending some time with you, Krista. Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people
Yep.
find your work?
Yes, I am on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but I haven't posted there in a long time. And my website. Yeah. Yeah. Those are the main places. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at gruntswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.